Hey everybody, it's Tommy Canelli and welcome back to Before the Lights podcast, the show that tells you how they made their mark. He is dubbed the classic Blue Note and has a star on the Philadelphia Walk of Fame. An actor, singer, entertainer, songwriter, music producer, and even a minister. An internationally acclaimed musician with 4 gold albums, 2 platinum albums, 1 double platinum album, and 2 gold singles. A music and life coach who is now a best-selling author. He's the last remaining member of Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. Please welcome to the show, Jerry Cummings. Jerry, welcome to Before the Lights.
Tommy Canelli, I am happy to be here. Glad that we made this connection, and I'm looking forward to all of the questions, and I think I got the answers.
Well, let me start here. Happy belated birthday. Today is August 25th, and a couple days ago, you just turned 72.
What a time. I mean, my son is here from Orlando, Florida. My daughter's here from Toronto, Canada. And we're having a big pizza party at Aurelio's on Saturday, and this, 72 years old. Because of all the things that are going on in my life at this point, I feel like I'm just starting all over again.
Well, let's get into your life a little bit and back it all the way up. You were born in the red clay hills of Augusta, Georgia. You were supposed to be an aborted baby as your mother was given turpentine and gin, but here you are. Here's Jerry 72 years later.
Well, the turpentine and gin, I guess I drank it, I guess I was drunk before I got here. But yeah, my mother was 14 when she got pregnant. And I think that there was an attempt to abort me because of this 14-year-old young girl. And also I found out, who she was pregnant by. He was big time, celebrity person, and he would have been charged with rape, at 14 years old. And so I have a family picture, Tommy, where you can see my grandmother and my aunt hiding my mother in the back of them because she was 7 months pregnant with me. But it didn't work. Nothing. I found out. And I wonder how I could go all of those years and nobody never mentioned my father. How is that? What's the secret, But, it took a while, but it's like putting a puzzle together. You hear certain things, like the first person, my grandmother took me from the hospital and took me straight to my aunt's house, and I'm saying, well, she bypassed our house to go straight to my aunt's house from the hospital. Why? And then I find out years later why. Because that wasn't my aunt. For all those years, I call her my aunt. That was not my Aunt Frances. That was my sister.
Oh.
And I'm saying, whoa, don't do this to me. And it's like the movie Jumping the Broom. Angela Bassett played the young girl's mother, and then all those years she went through college and everything, and then finally she finds out that Angela Bassett's sister is her real mother. So it's like, I don't know, man. It took me 2 or 3 months to get over this. I was grieved. My aunt is my sister. Come on, my Aunt Frances is really my sister. That's amazing.
I give you credit. It had taken me about 2 years, not just 2 months to get over that one.
I mean, it took me a while. Because all I knew was my Aunt Frances, That's all I knew. So it took me a while to really get over it. Because let me tell you, what happened was my aunt had made me a bedroom in her home. So when I come to town, that was my bedroom. So I hang my clothes in the closet, of course, and my shoes on the floor. And one day I looked down to get my shoes and there was a portrait in the back of the closet. So when I picked the portrait up, I noticed that the portrait looked like me. And I said, now, wait a minute. Why does this look like me? I said, Aunt Frances, who is this man in the closet in the frame? She said, Jerry? She said, that's my daddy. I said, well, if that's your daddy, why he look like me? So I just let it go. But she didn't say, that's our daddy. She said, that's my daddy. And I said, wait a minute. So finally, it all came out many, many, many years later. As a matter of fact, Tommy, you're so on time. I found out that he was my father in 2023.
Oh, wow.
That's how long. I found out in April, May, June, July, August. 4 or 5 months ago. And so it burned me. I had to talk to people. I had to talk to counselors. I had to talk to producers. And they said this always happened in families. Especially in the 50s, the early 50s. I was born in 1951. And so it always happened in families. You find out that your aunt is really your sister and your uncle is really your daddy and all this kind of crazy stuff. But at least I found out.
I'm glad you found out. No matter how long it took, at least you found out. But let me move on to here. At age 4 or 5 in that time period, you knew you wanted to be an entertainer after seeing your grandmother record CC Ryder. Tell me and my listeners about that moment for you.
There was a guy who had a photo shop on Gwinnett Street in Augusta, Georgia. And that's where everybody went to have pictures taken. And I used to go into the dark room and watch stuff being developed with him. I was 3 or 4 years old, and I was fascinated. Then he said, my grandmother's name was Florence. She said, Florence, I got a recording booth that you can make a record in. So she said, okay, I want to make a record. I'll do CC Ryder. And so I went in the booth with her. And I watched her sing CC Ryder. And I said, Grandmama, I want to make a record too. She said, one day you will make a record. Okay. When the record finally came and I listened to it on the record player, I heard my grandmother singing on wax, and from that moment on, I knew what I wanted to do. Then I watched the Ed Sullivan Show. Of course, I saw Elvis on the Ed Sullivan Show. I saw James Brown, the Temptations, and and that was another thing. I wanted to be on television. I wanted to be on TV. Mm-hmm. So all of this was my dream. I used to dream about it. Now I'm gonna tell you what really got me. In 1971, I went to the movie to see Lady Sings the Blues with Diana Ross. And, of course, she had the heroin problem and, they were trying to get her off of drugs. And finally, her manager said, we got Carnegie Hall, and I heard that. I said, Carnegie Hall? I said, where's that? And he said, they would love you at Carnegie Hall, and, he had that voice that, we're going to Carnegie Hall, And so I wanted to know, where's Carnegie Hall? So that was my dream. I said, I want to go to Carnegie Hall too. And Harold Melvin was looking for a tenor. And the reason why was because all of the songs that was written that you hear us singing, like If You Don't Know Me By Now, Yesterday I Had the Blues, all the songs that we recorded were actually written for the Dells.
Oh.
They wasn't written for Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes. They were written for the Dells. But what Harold didn't know, my uncle Johnny Carter sang tenor for the Dells. So when he discovered me, I sounded like my uncle Johnny Carter, and they were looking for a tenor that sounded like the Dells tenor, and I just happened to fit the profile. So one day he called me to Philadelphia from Washington, D.C., and he said, I want you to come to meet me at the Fantasy Lounge, and we want to talk. I want to talk to you about something. And so I thought that he wanted to talk to me about my high school group, because I had a high school group, and we had won the Howard Theater Talent Show in Washington, D.C., And we sat down in the fantasy lounge, and he said to me, Jerry, how would you like to be a Blue Note? And that blew me away because I didn't have a forewarning. No one told me what the meeting was about. And he said, with you, Jerry, he said, we have 3 lead singers. He said, we have Teddy Pendergrass, we have me, Harold Melvin, and you, Jerry Cummings. He said, we'll have a dynamic group. And the next thing I know, I was flying on Northwest Airline to Detroit, where he introduced me to Aretha Franklin, and then we went from there on a Pan Am 747 to London, England, where I opened with Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes.
I want to get to London, but first I want to back up a little bit because there's a part from the research I did that I think is a very important step in your success, and that is Harry Pierce Jr., your best friend who was killed in Vietnam in 1969. How did he push Jerry Cummings to become the singer?
Oh, yeah. Harry and we used to call him the world's fastest human, Bob Hayes. He was a track star. And we used to play catch football in the park. And one day he told me, he said, Jerry, he said, I've been drafted and more than likely I'm going to Vietnam. And so he said, now, if I get killed in Vietnam, Jerry, he said, I want you to promise me you'll keep singing. He said, because one day you're going to make it big. About several months later, a friend of mine saw me and he said, Jerry, did you hear about Harry? I said, no. He said, man, Harry was killed in Vietnam. And it's in the newspaper. So I saw the newspaper article, which I have a copy of it even today. And all I could hear him saying was, if I'm killed, Jerry, keep singing. One day you're going to make it. And about, 3 years after that is when I met Harold Melvin. But I still hear his voice. It's like it was yesterday. This was 1968 when he said that to me. And he was murdered in 1969 in Vietnam. And so I met Harold in 1972. And I started recording with him even before I got in the group. I was signed to Harold Melvin Enterprises. He wouldn't allow me to sign with Gambling Hub. He wanted to be my record company, personal manager. I didn't know anything about the business. I didn't know that they cheat you out your royalties. I didn't know any of that. I didn't know there were gangsters there. I didn't know none of that. I'm just, 21 years old, and I'm like the new kid on the block. But he protected me, and people say, well, is it reported that Harold Melvin stole y'all money? And I said, if he did, I said, he gave me more than money. I said, he gave me an opportunity.
Jerry, you had said that you had opened with Harold Melvin, the Blue Notes, in London, England. Explain to me and my listeners the love of R&B in London, because I understand you guys had to travel like by armored truck and things like that. Yeah. That didn't happen in the United States. What was it like?
It was like the Beatles were in America. We were like that in England. The people in England have a great love for music. Our songs are we still got the #1 disco song in England called Bad Luck. And we did Bad Luck in 1974. And it's still the top disco song in England today. It's still selling, and I'm glad because my royalties come from over there. But they have a love for music. Music don't get old there, especially R&B, blues, jazz. I mean, none of the music gets old there. A lot of entertainers that left America and gone and moved to England, like Sheila Ferguson of the 3 Degrees. She lives in England. Tina Turner went over to Europe and she stayed, Well, they pay you more and they love your music. Barry White played England and Bristol and Birmingham and different parts. He was a superstar, and he was one of my idols growing up. So the music never grows old in the United Kingdom and in Europe. It never grows old. It's still celebrated as though it just came out, Tommy, as though it was just released.
Harold had given you a lot more than if he stole money. He gave you an opportunity, but he also named you the classic blue note. What's that mean to you?
One night we were at this home of a well-known person, and they had these beautiful chairs, and I always wore suits. I always wore, suit, shirt, tie, especially when I was able to get out of polyester and wear gabardine and Yves Saint Laurent and Pierre Cardin and, and I wore the hats, and I was probably the most dressed person in the group. And so I was sitting in a big chair with the high back with my suit on, and Harold looked at me. He said, "You are the classic blue note," and it stuck, and that became like a trademark for me, and I kept it. I said, "Well, not bad." And then Lisa made the logo for it, the brand for it, and she branded it, and still is, and so it kind of stuck with me, and I'm the only one that's alive, other than, I don't know, people didn't know that Billy Paul, who sung Me and Mrs. Jones at one time, was a blue note. They didn't know that Frankie Beverly and May, they didn't know that he was one time a blue note. See, the blue notes go back to 1954, and so I don't even call myself, Harold Melvin wasn't even an original blue note. He wasn't with the group in 1954 when the blue notes started, and so when people start talking about the original blue notes, well, just because Tom Brady is one of the greatest football players to ever play for New England, he's not an original quarterback. Quarterbacks before Tom Brady. Sure. You had singers before Harold Melvin. You had singers in the blue notes before Jerry Cummings. So I have a picture of the original blue notes from 1954, and Harold Melvin wasn't there. So they don't understand this business of music and how it really works. I was recording with the blue notes before I was even put on stage with them, because I was a recording artist. See, everybody that take a picture with the blue notes, wasn't necessarily a recording artist. They may have been a great dancer. They may have been a great choreographer, but everybody didn't record. I was a recorder. So I ended up producing and recording not only with them, but I ended up producing and recording myself. It's My Pleasure was the first song that I ever produced on myself and wrote and sang. I know I found it in Hong Kong in 2017. I wonder, how did my song get to Hong Kong?
I want to bring up your new music, but before that, you brought up Teddy Pendergrass.
Yeah.
What was it like working with him? Because Teddy was a bad drummer back in the day. And I think people look at him as this vocalist, but Teddy was a drummer. What was it like working with Teddy Pendergrass?
Now some people may not know this. I know. Teddy was a better drummer than he was a singer. Teddy was the best drummer in Philadelphia. It wasn't Earl Young. Earl Young played on all of the MFSB music. But Teddy Pendergrass was a better drummer than Earl Young. Now, I know Earl will get mad if you heard me say that. I think Earl may be 82 years old now, but he's got all the gold and platinum on the wall. But I remember shows when Teddy would get off of the microphone and go get on the drums, and he got your attention. He's a great drummer. He was a drummer before he was a singer. To work with him, I learned a lot, and we became best friends. I became like family with his mother, Mother Ida Pendergrass. If you search YouTube, Jerry Cummings sings to Mother Ida Pendergrass. I sang to her on her 100th birthday, and she cried the whole time. I sung a song called "No One Compares to You," and she cried the whole song. She passed away last year at 104 years old. I have a picture of her behind me up on the top shelf. So we were like family. We finally, we competed with each other on stage live. My tenor, his baritone, like the Dells with Johnny Carter and Marvin Jr. So yeah, he was he couldn't dance now. If you watch Teddy was stiff as a board. He couldn't dance. But his voice made up for that. He could sing now. And he's a church boy. If you don't know me by now, it's nothing but church music with love lyrics. Yesterday I had the blues. It's just church music with love lyrics. So I love this business. I thought I'd be retired by now. And destiny fooled me.
You had brought up before, If You Don't Know Me By Now, and maybe some of the other songs our listeners may or may not know that Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes did was The Love I Lost and Wake Up Everybody. When Teddy left the group, Jerry, was it a shock, and did it change the Blue Notes and everything that happened from there? Because it seemed like after Teddy went, the success that you guys had with him kind of left.
Teddy Pendergrass was the greatest lead singer I ever sang with. The night we were in the Total Experience in Los Angeles, and then there was a night when Teddy, me and him was in the dressing room. He said, "Jerry," he said, "I'm leaving the group." I said, "Well, you do what you feel is right for you to do." And he left the group and went on his own. Now, again, there are people who may not understand what I'm saying, but I'm going to say it anyway, and they can think about it later. Teddy actually outgrew the Blue Notes. It's like Smokey Robinson outgrew the Miracles.
Yeah.
There are artists that started out in groups who went on their own. Sam Cooke outgrew the Soul Stirrers. Sam Cooke sang with a group. But then Sam Cooke outgrew that and he went out on his own. So you got to know when to go. I was faithful to stay with Harold even after Teddy left, put together another group, because he was the one that brought me in and signed me to a contract. And I loved doing what I was doing. And I learned a lot. I was in the studio, with Gamble Huff and Joe Tarja, some of the greats, I was able to meet all the entertainers that I grew up with. My mama used to have a picture of the Manhattans when in the early 60s, and I got to be on the show with the Manhattans in England, and tell Blue, I had a picture of you, 1961. My mama came to see y'all. He said, "Shut up, I don't want to hear that." You're telling my age, So I got a chance to Aretha, respect. My mama played that all the time. And then I got the chance to meet Aretha more than once. Everybody, I don't think there's anybody in the business that I grew up listening to that I didn't meet in person.
On that note, what was it like then meeting Luther Vandross, which was one of your favorite singers?
Luther, when I started, I had gone to church and become rather religious, and I had stopped listening to R&B, but when Luther came out, when Luther started singing, all of a sudden, it was like, I got to buy that cassette. and I bought the cassette and I played it in my car, and I just love Luther Vandross, and I got a chance to see him in Dallas at the Dallas Convention Center. And he was my favorite crooner next to Barry White. Barry White was first. 1973. I Got So Much to Give by Barry White. I fell in love with it. I still play it. I played it yesterday. But Luther was a great. Have you ever heard him sing A House Is Not a Home? And Dionne Warwick was out in the audience and she was just crying. And you go on YouTube and put in Luther Vandross, A House Is Not a Home, and it will just fascinate you. He had a great voice.
Mm-hmm.
He was Aretha Franklin's background. He was Aretha's background vocalist. Yeah, he was saying background before you ever heard of him. He sang background for Aretha, and he sang background for Dionne Warwick. He was a background singer. Wow. But he outgrew the background. See what I'm saying?
Yep.
He outgrew background. Somebody said, man, you need to go on your own and sing,
Jerry, after the Blue Notes, you worked at General Motors in Texas. How long did it take you to return back to music?
I worked at General Motors for 10 years, and finally I took the buyout. I think Harold came through town and wanted me to come back to the Blue Notes, but I wasn't going back, And but I stayed out of music for 15 years. By the time I came back, the recording studio had changed. We used to splice tape.
Yeah.
Cut the tape and paste it together, right?
Yep.
Now you just go on the computer and you fix it. It's like, I was gone, but a guy in the studio told me in Dallas, he heard I have a song called Over the Woman, and I told Lisa to send it to you, but it's being mastered again today. I'll get it to you.
Okay.
And he heard it back then, and he said, man, when did you do this? I said, I did this about 15 years ago. He said, let me tell you something. He said, you're ahead of your time. He said, the reason why you got out was you got burned out. Because I used to be in the studio all night. Didn't eat, recording, mixing, mastering. I would go in at 5 or 6 in the evening and come out daylight the next day. That's how, but I did. I realized I got burned out, and so I went to church. There was some great music in the church, great singers in the church. And then they had a musical and they asked me to sing. And I sung a song called Walk Around Heaven All Day. They went crazy, and I decided that I didn't want to just sing in church. I wanted to speak in church because I thought that I was a better speaker than I was a singer. And I can really now, thank God, I can do both. I can produce, because I believe this, Tommy. I think that we need a balance in life. I don't think we need to be all religion and don't listen to music. I think sometimes people become too religious. I don't listen to that no more. That's the devil's music. That ain't the devil's music. The devil ain't never make no music. Well, he used to be the chief musician in heaven. Were you there? Did you hear him? Last I heard, he got kicked out. He couldn't have been that great. So it's like I think we need a balance. I don't think we should get to a point where we don't want to hear the love I lost, and if you don't know me by now, and wake up and wake. That's too religious. I don't think God wants us to be religious. He wants us to be righteous, but not religious. He wants us to have a relationship with him, but a relationship is not religious. Relationship means that we trust him, we love him, we acknowledge him, we respect him, we honor him, and we thank him. I thank God Look, I died in 2017 in a bowling alley. I fell dead from a massive stroke. And God raised me. Had it been God, because if it would have been the devil, I would still been dead. But God raised me from the dead. I had massive blood clots on both lungs, and they had a clot buster. A cardiologist told me about the clot buster, that they had to go up in me and bust those clots, or I'd be dead in the morning again. And so that was 2017. That's 6 years ago. I'm healthier now than I've ever been in my life. Can nobody tell me miracles don't exist? I'm a living miracle. I was supposed to have been aborted, remember?
That's right. That's right.
The time and then, I beat that. If I could beat that, before I even came in the world, I could beat a stroke.
Listeners, what I want you to do is go to FromGoldToGlory.com. Get your hands on Jerry's autobiography, From Gold to Glory, which is in pre-production to be a major motion picture. You can go to the show notes and click a link that'll take you right there. And I bet if you ask real nice, Jerry will probably even autograph a copy of his book for you and send it to you. Jerry, when I read the title, two things resonated with me was the word gold. Is that referring to the gold records, or is that referring to materialistic gold? What is the word gold in the title in reference to?
It's success. It's success. Like when you get a gold record, that's success. That's 500,000 copies sold. A million. We sold 1 million copies of If You Don't Know Me By Now in one day in England. And let me tell you how that happened. We did it live on BBC Radio with the London Symphony Orchestra. We did it live on BBC. In 24 hours, 1 million records sold. That's gold.
That's gold.
That's gold. And that didn't even happen in America. But it happened in England in 1974. 1 million copies. And I had, Harold didn't even tell me that we was going to be performing with the London Symphony Orchestra. We came out on stage and there they were. And they had these big monitors on the floor and the strings and all of this stuff was playing. And I felt like I was being lifted up off the floor. It was so beautiful. And then they tell me the next day, y'all sold over 1 million copies of that song on BBC Radio. I got the plaque on the wall in there. Success is not always how you see it or how you plan it. Sometimes it's a matter of being in the right place at the right time and meeting the right people. My producer for the movie was in the post office about a month and a half ago and ran into a guy that knew someone. I can't give out his name because I have a non-disclosure. I can't talk about it, but just being and so when she started telling the guy about the motion picture, he knew there's a guy who she picked to play me in the movie, young guy, good looking guy, Bruno Mars. That's the guy who she had picked to play me in the movie when I was young. But she turned around, some said, go back and talk to this guy and get some more information. And she went back and talked to him. And then all of a sudden he hooked us up with someone. If I called out, everybody would know, but I can't call out his name, but you will find out who it is. But it's about being in the right place at the right time, and just having the vision and the dream to accomplish certain things in your life. And you find yourself, I'm not a law of attraction person, but I've seen the law of attraction work in my own life. I want to make a record one day. Well, I made a lot of records. I said it and now I'm saying it. And it's just a matter of, I have a book, this book right here, and I know the audience can't see it. Maurice White of Earth, Wind & Fire asked me had I ever read this book called As a Man Thinketh by James Allen. And I said, no. Well, that was in Canada when he asked me that. But then I went to LA, and guess who I run into on Hollywood Boulevard? Maurice White. And where was he going? To the bookstore. And so I picked up the book, As a Man Thinketh, and I've had it since 1974. And it's only 72 pages, but it talks about dreamers, and those the dreamers and your dream and how if you think about and discuss your dreams that you will one day meet it, and I found it to be true. I read. And one thing that I know is a lot of people don't read. They like to look at pictures, but they don't read, And I think that comes from being a child. We used to love coloring books and we love pictures, but you got to read. I have a book back here called This Business of Music. This Business of Music, Harold Melvin gave me in 1973. I think this is like the 11th volume, and so I had to read, and it's small print, and it's thick, but I had to read it, go over contracts, learn about publishing, and if like what you do, you interview, you're on the radio. Well, you had to study that. Mm-hmm. You had to learn how to run all that equipment, how to put it all together, and now you're the best.
Well, I appreciate that, Jerry. Let me ask you this, though. Your goal was Carnegie Hall, and you sang My Hero there on October 19th, 1974. How easy is it for you to put yourself back at that moment at Carnegie Hall singing that song?
It's really blows my mind because Harold Melvin did not tell me that I was going to be singing My Hero in Carnegie Hall that night. He didn't tell me. Well, I think he would have had a problem with Teddy too, because Teddy wanted to do all the singing, right? Teddy didn't want nobody to lead but him. So he didn't tell me, he didn't tell the group, he didn't tell nobody. But I had rehearsed the song for over a year with Harold. One of the first songs that he taught me was My Hero, theme from the opera The Chocolate Soldiers. Well, he knew Sid Bernstein, and Sid Bernstein brought the Beatles to America. And so he told Sid, he said, Sid, I got a guy named Jerry Cummings from Washington, D.C. He said, he can sing My Hero. And Sid said, get out of town. He said, yeah. Because the Blue Notes had a hit song called My Hero in 1960, but no one has ever done it since 1960. So when he met me and taught it to me, he taught it to me for over a year. So then we go into Carnegie Hall. Sid Bernstein said, you got a guy that can sing My Hero, theme from the opera The Chocolate Soldiers. He said, I'll be the presenter and the promoter for the group at Carnegie Hall. But he got to sing that song. But he never told me I was going to sing it. And next thing I know, I heard Harold say, My Hero. I said, My Hero? He said, Jerry, step up to the mic. Take your time. And I stepped up to the mic, and everything that he taught me came right straight out my mouth. Came out. The people started roaring. And what's the word they say? Bravo. Bravo. They stood up, and then I saw Sid Bernstein and Clive Davis sitting on the front row, and they stood up. And I sang it one other time after that in Ohio at a convention center, but they had put it away in a vault in Drexel University in Philadelphia. And Mike Tarja, Joe Tarja's son, before he passed away, he said, Jerry, they got My Hero in a vault at Drexel University. He said, here's the guy's name that's over it. He said, call him and tell him that I said for you to talk to him. So I called Drexel University, got in contact with the guy, And I told him who I was. And he said, well, Jerry, he said, let me look for it. So he called me back. He found it. And I said, I thought he was going to charge me maybe $5,000 to let me have it, or if he was going to let me have it at all. He said, Jerry, he said, since you performed this and it's here in the vault, he said, I'm going to digitize it and clean it up and send you the file. I said, well, how much is that going to cost? He said, absolutely nothing. He gave me the file. He gave me the file. So we cleaned it up, and I sent it to England. And I got the chart. It went all the way to #1.
And listeners, you can hear it on any platform. I've listened to it on Spotify, along with Jerry's other new music called It's My Pleasure. Jerry, when was this song originally written?
It's so much to this story. I watch Harold so much because every time somebody would say, thank you, Harold would say, it's my pleasure. They say, Harold, I just want to thank you. He said, oh, it's my pleasure, babe. You know, it's my pleasure. And that's when I decided to write the song, It's My Pleasure to Love Someone Like You. And so I took him saying that and wrote that song, you know, and I let his wife hear it, I guess about 7 or 8 months ago, Harold Melvin. And she couldn't believe, you know, because when you hear, let me say this, and I'll be honest with you. When you hear me do It's My Pleasure, you hear Harold Melvin teaching me how to breathe, how to hold a note. You know, all of that is in that song. When you hear me sing, he was my mentor. He was my teacher. He was one of the greatest teachers I could ever have, other than Roberta Flack, because Roberta Flack was my teacher at Brown Junior High School in Washington, D.C. So I had some great teachers, man. Roberta, I got a picture with me and Roberta. I'll send it to you. Me and Roberta and my daughter when she was very young. So I've been blessed to be in the right place at the right time, you know, and to have some great people to mentor me, including Barry White, including Barry Gordy, including Roberta Flack, including Harold Melvin. You know, I had some great people to mentor me, and I give them the credit because I had to learn this.
One of my very good friends, Antonino D'Ambrosio, just released his movie, Roberta, on Roberta Flack.
Oh, really?
It is fabulously done. I will get you a link.
How do I see that? How do I see that?
I'll get you a link to that, Jerry. I'll send that to you so you can watch it. It is fabulous. I mean, he did an excellent job with that. You're going to love it, especially if she was a teacher of yours. You're going to fall in love with this film. It is beautifully done.
Brown Junior High School in Washington, D.C. She told me, she said, you got a beautiful voice. She told me that back then. Keep on singing. Then I went to see at Mr. Henry's on 6th and Pennsylvania Avenue, where she played the piano at, and did an interview in 2017 in her apartment upstairs over the Mr. Henry's. Well, you see her playing the piano in the window. That's Mr. Henry's club. It's still there. Mm. You know, I used to go there and get the best draft beer on the planet. And I was in my 20s.
You spent 50 years in the entertainment business. What is your most proudest accomplishment?
Just the opportunity to share the gift and to be able to share with young people who will listen, because most of them don't listen to old people, you know, to be able to share with them, I know how to make this work. But they already think they know. I just had 3 artists that I spent money on and none of them worked out, you know, because it's more than talent. And I say this to everybody, it's more than talent, it's character. You know, a lot of people get all excited about a voice, someone who can sing. I get excited about the character. You got to be humble. You can't be big-headed and think you know everything, especially if you in your 30s and I'm 72. You know, I've been there, so I know how to get you there, you know, if you will listen. And I had a guy sit here in my living room with his son, a country western singer, had great potential, you know, and then after I talked to him for an hour, I don't invite anybody to my home, first of all. And after I sat here for an hour talking to him and how we can make his son work and make his way, and he said to me, well, I just don't want to see my son get ripped off. And I said, well, there's the door. You need to go home, you know, because you're wasting my time,
That's
you know.
Right. That's
and
right.
I wasn't being mean, but if I'm going to take the time out with you, you know, to try to help you, and then you weren't about ripping off, I'm giving you an opportunity to make what you want to make, you know. But my greatest moment in this business was when Harold Melvin said, how would you like to be a Blue Note? And I wasn't expecting that. My hero at Carnegie Hall, I wasn't expecting that, you know. And then to be here with you, Tommy, talk about this is a great moment. Okay? This interview will go down in history.
Well, thank you.
It's a great moment. Because when Lisa gets through putting it out there, man, boy, you're going to be bigger than big. Lisa made a guy so successful, he called her and told her to stop.
That's always a good problem.
Have you ever heard of such a thing?
No.
You getting too much publicity? You selling too much stuff? He said he couldn't keep up with Lisa. Lisa Finley is an angel if I ever met one.
People, the book is called From Gold to Glory. Go to FromGoldToGlory.com. Get your hands on it. Get the link in the show notes and get your hands on the book. Jerry, I want to say thank you so much for taking time, coming on my show and talking about your life, your career, what you still got going on. This has been nothing but an honor for me.
Well, it's an honor for me. And all these yellow books behind me are From Gold to Glory, and I autograph every one. When someone orders the book, I'll autograph the book personally for them. So let them know I got about 300 behind me. I can autograph them and send them out.
You hear that, listeners? They're ready to go. All you got to do is click the link and get them purchased. I also want to tell you about my podcast docu-series in support of Native American rights of the harsh and unfair treatment of the indigenous community. I did it with filmmaker Antonino D'Ambrosio. It's entitled A Heartbeat and a Guitar, Johnny Cash and the Making of Bitter Tears. Go to the show notes to click a link to listen to the entire series. That's going to do it for this episode of Before the Lights. I'm Tommy Canale. And until next time, everybody, a salute, a chin chin.